Welcome to today's Harmony Insights lunch date. My name is Erich Kurschat. I'm the owner of Harmony Insights, a company that allows me to work with organizations and consultants using the DISC personality assessment, a lot of which is done online these days, virtually, since we can't meet face-to-face for workshops, etc. So assessments can be completed virtually, and we can run with it from there. I'm also the founder of HR Hot Seat, an inclusive HR mastermind community of over 2,500 members in about 10 licensed chapters around the country. At this point, you can find out more about HR Hot Seat at hrhotseat.com. This is, as I mentioned, a Harmony Insights lunch date. I started doing these at least a few weeks ago to spend time with people who really inspire me. Just 30 minutes of my lunch hour here in the Central Time Zone, connecting with people so that I can launch into my afternoon inspired to do my best work. And I decided to invite people along for that ride. Today's conversation is going to be with my friend, Jon Thurmond. Jon, welcome to today's Harmony Insights lunch date.
Appreciate you having me, Eric. Hope you've been well.
You have been on my short list from the very beginning of these lunch dates. And I was, I'm gonna put this out there. I'm gonna be vulnerable. I was hesitant, nervous even, to ask if you would be my guest. Not because I thought you would say no, but I just, I was nervous about it. We'll put it that way. And then you showed up and said, Eric, I would love to be a part of these conversations. And I was so thrilled to hear that.
You're too kind. You really are. Really glad to be here.
So, I would love for you to give people a sense of who you are and what you do and what positions you well specifically for this topic that you have chosen today that we've titled Finding New Ways to Nurture Your Community in Challenging Times.
Absolutely. So I'm a human resources practitioner. I have been for the last 20 years. Thought I was going to save the world as a band director. That didn't work out. Better or worse. But over those 20 years, I've worked in a lot of different industries, done a lot of different things, started as a recruiter, got into labor relations, was a union negotiator for a period of time. And 7 years ago, lost my job, got a package, said, good luck and Godspeed, get out of here. And I did, and was very fortunate at that time to get engaged with the online HR community and become part of that conversation, which I was not part of before. I really knew the people in the company I worked for, large company, 250 plus HR people, didn't really know anybody else. So over that, that 7 years ago, now fast forward 3 years ago, didn't go to SHRM National, said, hey, I was talking to my friend, Wendy Daly, who I co-host my Twitter chat with, said, hey, why don't we have a Twitter chat? Let's commiserate about not going to National, not going to New Orleans. Lo and behold, 65 people from 9 countries showed up. We suddenly are building a community. People are talking about what's going on and what are we missing? What speakers do we want to see? What kind of learning do we feel like we're missing out on? That blossomed into what we now have as the HR Social Hour. And so we've had the HR Social Hour Twitter chat now going on 2.5 years, the second and fourth Sundays of each month at 7 p.m. Eastern time, where we bring in a community of practitioners and HR adjacent people, anybody around, anywhere globally that wants to have part of that conversation. Started seeing a lot of success there and said, hey, I've been a big fan of the podcast medium for many years and been taking part in an 80s podcast for, 7 years now. How can I translate that into something that ties into my day job and something I'm really passionate about in terms of connecting HR practitioners and people and just cool people that I've gotten to know? That led to the HR Social Hour Half Hour podcast, which we launched in February of 2018. And the idea at the time, Eric, was, hey, we know 50 people. It'll be the 50 people that hang out on the Twitter chat, right? We'll talk to those 50 people and then we're done. That was 2.5 years ago. We've now had, yesterday was episode 115 of the show, or 116 even. We've put out 160 plus episodes of the podcast in that 2-year period. We just picked up our 104th country last week with Bosnia-Herzegovina. And yeah, it's this thing that has really expanded and grown well beyond what we would have ever imagined or dreamed. And I think it's because we were really focused on giving back to our community. And when I say our community, the HR community, again, what cool people do we know or get to know that we think more people should know? What we found is over this, last many months, people are struggling. We're all struggling in some way. Many people have lost their jobs. Many people are experiencing significant changes. Let's face it, none of us have lived through anything like we've seen in the last 12 weeks or so. And somebody came to us and said, can we have an additional chat? Well, guess what? We're not dictated what we have to do. So absolutely, let's have more chats. We had an additional chat outside of the normal second and fourth Sundays. And the whole conversation was around COVID. How are we dealing with it? What are we experiencing? And just letting HR people talk to other HR people about what we're dealing with. Because let's face it, it's hard. It's hard. We have things at home. We're concerned about ourselves. We have to be concerned about our employees. Many of us, if you're working for a small company, I work for a large organization, so I'm not affected by a lot of the legislation that's come to pass. But if you're a department of one or working for a company that has all of a sudden all this new legislation and rules to follow, it's hard. It's really, really hard. So it's been really enlightening and fun, and recognizing while it's been a challenge, Eric, Wendy and I have worked really hard to maintain some sense of normalcy or fun, or engage, and keep people engaged in different ways, because they may not be able to get it somewhere else. And that's where, when I first approached you about having this conversation, it really was, we have looked for ways to engage that community well beyond a Twitter chat or a podcast. And we've had a lot of fun along the way doing it.
Yeah. I love it. Your growth has been phenomenal. I love keeping track of not only the episodes that you put out, but certainly the numbers and the numbers of countries that you're in front of. And I just thought this was such a great topic, especially because I think a number of my recent lunch dates have been around the topic of connection and service and support. What are you giving to your network and getting from them? I love just in your intro saying that you were going to save the world as a band director, I think you said.
Yeah. I was going to be Mr. Holland.
I'm still trying to save the world with choirs. And I'm not sure that it's working necessarily, but I really am so grateful for any opportunity I have at this point to put music out into the world, because I think that's one of the things that we need most at this point.
Well, and I love the fact that you and I have bonded over that conversation with music, and Ben Folds in particular. Yeah. That's one of the things that we have tried to do with our community and with the HR Social Hours. Look, there are a lot of great podcasts and a lot of other great content out there where you can learn about what's going on. Look, there's a COVID webinar every day of the week, and I've actually taken part. I've presented on several, but we've really made it about the community and getting to know you. So when you were on our show, which you were kind enough to take part in, we talk about DISC and leadership and those kind of things, but we also talk about you and your favorite movie and your favorite TV show and those things that were down the road. If somebody heard you on our podcast and then met you at a conference or met you at some event, hey, I heard you talk to John and Wendy, and your favorite movie or your favorite artist is Ben Folds. Now, you and John talked about Ben Folds. I love Ben Folds. I saw him 6 times, whatever it is. You suddenly have that connection that you're not going to necessarily have otherwise.
I love that. And I also love one of the questions that you ask in your interviews, which is, who is one person that people should know? And I would imagine that gets you just a number of names of potential interviewees for your podcast.
Right.
But as someone listening to it, then I'm thinking, oh, that's a name I haven't heard before. And this person seems pretty passionate about, connecting everybody to this new name. I should go and find them myself. And then suddenly a couple months from now, we're connected on LinkedIn or Twitter or elsewhere. And I have this great relationship with somebody that I had never heard of prior to you asking that question.
I think that's been one of the most fun things in the last 2.5 years is, again, with the idea of being originally, it's the 50 people we know. But then all of a sudden those people would say, hey, do you know my friend Sue or Bob or Jimmy? Not that those are necessarily people, but, just all of a sudden it's this domino effect. And your network is your network is your network. And again, we've always said we want to introduce cool people to cool people. Yeah. And who have we met? Who's doing things that other people in the community may be aware of? We've been incredibly fortunate to have people that are thought leaders and well recognized in our community. Steve Brown or Lori Rudiman, Jennifer McClure, rock stars, right? Tim Sackett, people that everybody know. But I love having those people that nobody knows that I made some connection with. I met them at a conference, or they contacted me and said, I listened to your podcast. And we talk to everyone before they come on the show. I spend at least 30 minutes, or Wendy will spend 30 minutes with someone before we ever have them on to figure out, who is this person? What drives them? What are they going to bring to the conversation? Because let's face it, I don't want people to just come on to sell. That's really easy. Other people do that, and that's great. And not to say we don't have sponsors. We've been incredibly fortunate to work with people, though, that aren't just trying to sell something. They really are trying to make some type of connection. And that's been one of the most fun things is, again, now all of a sudden I can say, like I said, yesterday was episode 116, and I've got shows booked through June. So, we're continue on the path. The average podcast lasts 10 episodes. So we're at 115. And with everything else we do, with Wendy doing Wonder Woman, with sponsored shows, with conference episodes, we're at 164. So we've really beat the odds in that regard.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is the community that we built, the fans, the listeners, the people that are engaged. But then, like I said, all of a sudden trying to find these other things to do beyond a podcast to keep people engaged and entertained to some extent with everything else going on in the world.
Yeah, congratulations on that longevity. I should point out in the chat area, Claire Petrie, who was my lunch date yesterday, I believe. We talked about the how and why of both LinkedIn and Twitter, and she gave us a sense of what Twitter chats are. I believe yours was brought up during that conversation, and she put in the chat area that she has her HR Social Hour t-shirt on right now. Yeah. So you have swag out there. I love it.
Well, and again, that was one of those things where we wanted people to be able to obviously share our brand and promote what we do. We're incredibly, for those of you that don't know me, I'm a huge comic book nerd. I have a lot of friends in the comic book industry. I know a lot of people. The guy that created our logo was the longest running artist on the G.I. Joe comic book, among other things. And so, yeah, he's a storyboard artist and worked on commercials and all that crazy things. Well, another one of my friends did another design for me. Long story. Anyway, the point is, we had these logos and things, and we wanted to share them. So we said, hey, how about we open a store? Maybe people would like a shirt or a sticker or whatever it is. And what's really cool is we make a little bit of profit from it. We are donating all those profits back to charity. So, as it is right now, we've donated to the Virginia Foodways, which supports Meals on Wheels, Sanford Employee Health Fund, which is where Wendy works out in South Dakota, the Hero Initiative, which is a comic book fund for basically the creators, more aged folks all these folks are independent contractors. They didn't have health insurance and what have you, and it supports them. This month, all of our funds are going to Chris Fields, who recently passed away. He was a huge practitioner in our business, a resume writer, just an all around amazing guy. Unfortunately passed away last month. We are donating our profits for the month of May to the scholarship fund that's been put together in his name with Code Crew, which is a group out of Memphis that helps deserving underprivileged kids go to school to study IT and coding.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I really appreciate all of that, and I'm sure our attendees do as well. A number of people here are HR practitioners, as they tend to be on my lunch dates. That's a large part of my audience, but a number of people are not. And a number of people are looking for ways to nurture their communities that maybe don't involve podcasts.
Sure.
Although the stories that you've told certainly translate into any number of things that people could be doing. I've put together a quick poll, if people are able to see it, which I'm going to launch right now, that asks, are you intentional about spending some amount of time each week nurturing your professional community? With the answer options being yes, no, and honestly, I hadn't thought about it before now. So as people respond to that, that'll give us a sense of if this is something we're prioritizing in general. What are some of the challenges that you think people are facing, maybe even specifically to what's going on right now, around their ability to nurture value within their network, whether that's a professional network, personal network? You could use the word network synonymously with community. What are some challenges that you think people are facing right now in terms of nurturing that community?
Again, I think we're all struggling at some level with everything that's going on. Maybe we know someone that's ill, or in my case, I have to handle anytime we have positive cases, kind of managing those cases of teammates that have come back positive for COVID-19. And it is a struggle. And I think beyond that, people doing what we're doing now with Zoom calls, of course, we're familiar with it, we're comfortable with it, but it's become the norm. In other words, we're doing it all the time. And I think people sometimes say, well, what else I don't want to just talk to people on Zoom or on Skype or whatever it may be. I want to have those in-person conversations, and we know we can't right now. So what else can we do? And, with the social hour, one of the things that we did, again, just to keep things light, knowing that people were really struggling with some heavy duty stuff during the week. right? And again, major lifting of issues when it comes to employees that are ill or these major legislation changes. Sunday nights, let's watch a movie. Let's pick a movie. We put it out to a vote on Twitter, Facebook, out there. Help us vote for a movie, and we'll all get on Twitter at 7:00 Eastern time on a Sunday night and watch a movie together. And it's been really fun because people, it's a collaborative thing. We all vote together. So the first movie we watched was Raiders of the Lost Ark. And then we watched Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. And then just most recently, we watched Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Mm-hmm. And what's really cool is that a lot of folks that take part, it's the first time they've ever watched those movies. And it's this communal, we're having this communal thing, right? It's on Twitter. We're not all together, but we're all sitting in our houses on Netflix or on Amazon or wherever it is, watching these movies and having a conversation about the movie while we're watching it. That doesn't have anything to do with HR, right? I mean, but it's just, it's fun, and it's just another way to do something, have connection.
It strikes me as you're saying that then one of the challenges, I guess the underlying challenge beyond or beneath that, is that we make the assumption that we have to serve people in a very particular way. That if I'm in HR, or if I'm in finance, or if I'm, whatever my area of expertise is, that is my sole value to the world, and I have to serve people in that way. And what you're saying is maybe being intentional about stepping back away from that purpose in a way that you've always defined yourself and the value that you bring, and think, how else can I engage folks? What do people need right now? How can I bring them together in a way that's going to be valuable to them, that maybe has absolutely nothing to do with what I do professionally?
And look, Eric, I think you know full well, I love HR. I love the profession. I love the people in it. And I love, my guests, my listeners, but I have a life outside of that. Again, the comic book, and I'll go back to the comic book stuff. I tend to go to 2 or 3 comic book conventions a year, and you're talking 30,000 plus people that are all into something. And it's not necessarily HR. I don't know if I've ever met, I've met a lot of people since that think it's cool that I've been killed in Batman comics, or that I know guys that write this, or this person did that. And again, it's super fun, but I want those people. I tried to meld all those worlds very early on. When I first started on Twitter, I had a professional account and a personal account. But what I learned is the more I talked about some of the fun things that I liked, if I liked comic books, or I liked the band Rush, I liked Ben Folds, those conversations with other HR practitioners changed. Or other business people, people that I've got connections that aren't in HR that are fans of Rush. And so every Saturday morning on Twitter, we do Rush Saturday. We share videos, either covers or live recordings of the band. And it's amazing what that has led to. The fact that I have a global network of Rush fans. How does that, how does that work? What, why? But it was just that, we all glommed onto something. And so it's that same thing. I love it. I have a friend, very good friend, who's not an HR person, that comes to movie nights because he likes the community. He's been on our show, but he's not an HR person. But he loves that sense of community. He appreciates the people. He likes the conversations. I want more of that. I'd love every, we really do. We try to be as inviting as we can, knowing that it's not just about HR. It really is about the community building piece, and, want to be as engaged as we can. So we did the movie night. We've done 2 trivia nights where we invited people and got on, private Zoom call. And the first time we had 22 people. The second time, I think we had 19. Somebody came from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
What? Yeah. What? That's crazy.
I love it.
But it was that they wanted to be connected, and it, hey, we're happy to have you. So I like comic books. I like movies. I like 80s stuff. So why not just share what I like? And if it resonates with you, great. If it doesn't, hey, find your thing. That's cool too.
I'd love to show the results of our poll. Are you intentional about spending some amount of time each week nurturing your professional community? 93% said yes. 1% said no, and hopefully for that 1%, we're giving some thought, some inspiration into how that would be possible. I would like to suggest that perhaps another challenge that we face, especially in times of challenge, as we're talking about today, is it would be very natural for me to be me focused, right? So I may understand that I have an entire network. I have all kinds of connections, professional connections, and I go on LinkedIn, I see them there, and I see them on Twitter and other places, but if times are uncertain and I'm worried about whether or not I can homeschool my children if I have them, or if I can stock my pantry, or that if I'm going to even have a job tomorrow, I'm focused on me. And so suddenly, yes, I have a network out there who's maybe relying on me for something, maybe not, but I am less focused on then nurturing those relationships because I'm trying to get my own needs met. What are your thoughts on that?
Again, I think it's a very fair place to come from. I've been incredibly fortunate. I work in a business that's considered essential.
Mm-hmm.
So we out of 2,600 teammates across the country, we've had one little area of layoffs. Thankfully, all those people have gotten back to work. I can't claim to understand. I've been laid off in my own career. I've gone through that process, been unemployed. I understand the pain and the issues it causes, but I can't speak to some of the things that people are necessarily living right now. I mean, I really see it as part of my responsibility because I've put myself out there as I try to, I always want to connect. I want to talk to people and understand how they're doing. And so I'll check in with a couple people every week, right? I'm not going to check with everybody, but this week I've had 3 or 4 calls with different people, and somebody new that had posted something on LinkedIn, and the person just lost their job and said, "Can I talk to you for 20 minutes?" Absolutely. Let's talk about your resume, or let's talk about how are you framing looking for the next job, those kind of things. So I guess it's up to us that are, maybe if you're in a spot where you're not having those challenges, reach out to those people that you think may be, or just ask, how can I help? The last question we always ask in our Twitter chat is, how can we help you right now? Mm-hmm. We always start with the same first question is, what's in your glass? And the last question is always, what can we do to help you right now? Mm-hmm. And some people will say, hey, check out this or check out that, or I'm getting ready to get laid off. Can somebody take a look at my resume? I never know what somebody's going to say. Can I fix all of the world's ills? No. I always say I'm not solving world hunger and I can't fix nuclear war, but I can help somebody. Yeah. I believe I've helped a few people along the way. I'm incredibly fortunate to be able to do that. Yeah. But I think it's, if you're in that spot and you're thinking about yourself, totally get it. And I've been there. I think it's up to those of us that are in a better place to help those that aren't.
Yeah. I like that question, asking, how can we help you right now? And sometimes people don't know. Maybe it's a fairly new relationship, professional relationship, and they don't yet know you well enough to be able to answer that question. I found a good alternative question can also be just, what is your greatest need right now? And anyone who attended today's lunch date or any other lunch date that I do, or any HR hot seat event that I run, knows that the Zoom form is going to ask the question, what is your greatest need right now? And if I was only looking for people who say, I need a disc facilitator, I'd be in trouble. Because very few people are saying that, right?
Sure.
But people are saying all sorts of things, some of which I can help with, and I might create content around. But honestly, for so many of the needs that come through, I'm making connections. I'm saying, well, you know what? That's not necessarily in my wheelhouse, but my friend Jon Thurmond does that really well. You want to learn more about Twitter chats? He's the guy to talk to because he's doing these things left and right. So it gives me a chance to branch out beyond how I've traditionally viewed myself as being of value and said, come at me with whatever your needs are right now, and I'm going to care enough about this relationship to bend over backwards to make a connection or an introduction or pass along a resource that is really going to be helpful to you right now.
Right.
Could you, because the question has come up and it came up yesterday, could you educate just very briefly our audience today on the basics of a Twitter chat, and if they were interested in learning from you about Rush or about movies that you're watching together or about what you're doing with HR Social Hour, how they can get involved with a Twitter chat?
Okay. All right. So as I try at a base level, a Twitter chat is a conversation that is scheduled for a predetermined time on Twitter, where the topic is chosen and everything is tracked by a hashtag. So, we follow handles, like at Jon_Thurmond is my handle, and I track HR Social Hour as my hashtag. So in our case, second and fourth Sundays of each month, 7 p.m. Eastern time, for 1 hour between 7 and 8 o'clock Eastern time, HR Social Hour is going on. And we welcome everybody at 7 o'clock, and we start with HR. So we use the hashtag HR Social Hour. We track that conversation throughout. So you can track it on Twitter. You can use TweetDeck. You can use Hootsuite like I use. So for example, throw out Q1, question 1, what's in your glass, hashtag HR Social Hour. And you would say, A1, I'm having a glass of water, hashtag HR Social Hour, or I'm having a beer, hashtag HR Social Hour, whatever it is. But we're tracking that conversation with that hashtag throughout. And we pose 6 questions in that hour time frame about whatever the topic is. We're this week coming up, So Sunday night, we're having a conversation about mental health awareness and mental health in the workplace and how HR professionals can help facilitate conversations that we all agree can be very challenging when it comes to mental health. We're really fortunate. We have a co-host who we just had on the podcast yesterday. It came out yesterday. His name is Greg Buck. Greg's a practitioner who has been open about some of the struggles he's had personally with mental health. And so he had approached me and said, I would love to have a conversation, have this Twitter chat about this conversation and help you facilitate it. Absolutely. That's the whole reason we do it, right? We went and we invited our peers to come in and help us with those conversations. So the HR social hour is a really easy chat because it's fair, again, it's 6 questions, a whole hour. What's cool is that you can answer the question and people pick up on it. You're going to have side conversations. I retweet. So I'm the moderator. I have everything preloaded. So questions go out at these certain times, but I'm then retweeting people. I may comment on what you're saying, but it's that, the conversation's all structured around that hashtag and that, whatever that topic is. I've been doing Twitter chats now for 6.5 years.
Wow.
And I've, like I said, we've run HR Social Hour since September. We did not at SHRM originally, but the actual HR Social Hour started September of 2017. So I've hosted however many a lot.
Yeah.
I've hosted some other chats. I took part in Next Chat when SHRM still had their chat going. Was the kind of the unofficial third host when everybody was out at corporate. They would let me run that. I got to do that several times before they wrapped that chat up. But anyway, it's been a tremendous place to get to know people, to make connections, to learn, because everybody's sharing their knowledge, and you can gain so much information and intelligence on what is working for other people, and then take those conversations offline, take them away from Twitter to LinkedIn to email to phone, whatever it is, and talk more about whatever those topics are.
And I'll say that I have yet to officially participate, but I've been a fly on the wall. So if you just want to get your feet wet, you go online and you follow the hashtag, whatever
Absolutely.
hashtag is being used, and you'll see how people are contributing. You can contribute if you would want. I think people would prefer that. But even if you didn't feel comfortable contributing just yet, you just wanted to see how they go, follow that hashtag, watch
That's
the
right.
conversation. You can be a fly on the wall.
We call it lurking. We all start as lurkers, and it's okay. I mean, I did it when I first started. I used to say when I first started and created my professional account, I just tracked other HR people. I watched what they were doing, but didn't contribute to the conversation. Once I started contributing and having those conversations and got to know people, it was unbelievable, the opportunities that came from it. And
I love it.
So
you have already, you've inspired people with all this talk of social hours and happy hours. You've inspired people to wonder if it's too early for adult beverages. So
I get that a lot.
That's on you. Jon, if you can believe it, we've already blown through our 30 minutes. People are going to want to follow up with you. They're going to want to listen to the HR Social Hour half-hour podcast that you and Wendy Daly do. They're going to want to join you for conversation around, G.I. Joe and, band directing and Rush and Ben Folds and some of these other things you've talked about. How can they find you online for these conversations?
Find me on Twitter. It's at Jon, Jon _Thurmond, THURMOND. JonThurmond.com for all things Jon Thurmond, if you want to learn a little bit more about speaking and some of the other things I do outside of my day job. And then the podcast you can find on all the major platforms under HR Social Hour or hrsocialhourpodcast.podbean.com. And that's the site that hosts the show, and you can listen directly from that website too.
I want to add an additional plug and a testimonial. I just did something accidentally that I didn't even intend to do, but this is something you do so well on your own show, and it immediately caught my attention. At the end of your interview, you say, you reference things that were said throughout your interview and pull it all together at the end in a very clever way. And I love that you do that because it's an example of active listening. You're not just sitting there asking these scripted questions and then playing some video game off on the side. Right. You may be, who knows?
I'm not. I'm not.
But the fact that you can regurgitate the things that you have heard throughout your conversation and bring it back at the end is something that I'm always so impressed by.
I appreciate that. I take a lot of notes. And in fact, one of the things I'm doing, and this is not a secret, I've announced it a couple places, but I've not launched it yet. One of the questions we ask everybody, like we asked you, is what's your favorite musician or band? So I'm putting together an HR Social Hour Spotify channel. Oh, and I'm working through that now. So I have gone back and I sent a picture to Wendy of all my notebooks for the last 2 years with everybody's notes, because I'm going through and looking at their bands and if they mention specific songs to put that song list together. So that's another thing I'm putting together, beyond the, again, how do we connect, or the coloring book pages, which is something else I got to do that was super silly, but again, knowing a lot of creators, got one of my cartoon buddies to draw me and Wendy on coloring book pages. And, coloring books are big with adults these days too, but I they're free. They're out there. You print them off 8.5 by 11. You can color them in, your kids can color them in. And we've had people share them back. And that's been so much fun to see, not just kids, but adults coloring these silly little pictures.
Yeah.
But then, the idea being that we're showing everybody, kind of what people are doing with that. So
well,
again,
also you're engaging them, you're serving them, and along the lines of what we're talking today, you're nurturing your community by allowing them the opportunity to have this creative outlet, which I just think is brilliant. So John, this has been great. A couple of things that I want to end with. Number one, in a moment, we're going to allow you or encourage you to go on with your afternoon if you need to unmute yourself. If you'd like to stick around to ask a question of John, any resources that we have shared, I'm going to request from John for him to send me some links immediately following this conversation so that I can follow up via email, blind copying everybody who attended today and get you links to the resources that we've discussed. The recording of this conversation will be made available at some point soon. I'm working on getting those edited and up on YouTube. So you'll be among the first to hear when those are made available. If you've thought that this has been a valuable conversation, I hope you will register for future Harmony Insights lunch dates. Just coming up next week, we have prioritizing emotional health is going to be one of our conversations. John said that that's a topic that he's speaking on pretty soon as well. Being okay with not being, or with being okay with not knowing as a leader. In times of crisis and uncertainty, people are coming to you for answers. How can you be okay with not knowing and communicate that in a way that still allows you to feel confident in who you are as a leader? And then finally, next Friday, I'm doing my second ever pop-up panel conversation. Everybody who comes together, I'm going to choose among volunteers to be on the panel. So everyone's going to come together at once. The topic is leadership. And then I'm going to say, okay, we have 3 panel slots for today's conversation. Who wants to be featured? And in the moment, I'm going to choose 2 or 3 people who volunteer to be a part of that pop-up panel, something that worked really well a couple of Fridays ago, and I'm really excited to do again. This is meant to inspire you, to connect you meaningfully with each other, to connect you meaningfully with our special guest today, Jon Thurmond, but then also to go back out into the world and do your best work, whatever that looks like, or find work that really resonates with you in some way. And it's just so helpful, John, to have you with us today to have this conversation. So I really appreciate you spending this time.
It's been a pleasure. And again, I appreciate the opportunity to do it. It's very flattering you say you were concerned about having that conversation. I'm glad we did.